Hey, everybody, welcome to the Christmas edition of the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. I hope that everybody is having a safe and happy holidays, as I will not have an episode on Christmas Day. I usually have an episode on Wednesdays. Wednesday is Christmas, and I'm going to spend time with the family. I will be back on Friday. I will have a special show before we do the Border Wars. A lot to get into, including the college football playoff. The Michael Penix Jr. era in Atlanta has officially begun. And I'm also going to break down what happened at the Muskogee County Christmas Showcase. Don't forget that Thrip Berenger and I will also have some Georgia Alabama Sports Live shows and unsolicited hot take. And I hope that you guys are just winding down, taking advantage of this R&R as we get ready to kick off the new year just right. It has been just an incredible 2024. So many things have happened in the world of sports, and I've been truly blessed to be a part of it, talking about sports to you on this show. Even though I don't have the radio show anymore on WQEE, I still want to keep this thing going because I want to try to get to 1,000 episodes. And I don't think it's going to be a situation, well, once I hit 1,000 episodes, then I'll just end up stopping. No, I'll keep going because I love talking about sports. You know, when I'm spending time with friends and family and, they want that small talk, talking about sports. We got sporting events going on in the back room while we're with family and friends during the holiday season. And, and I got an opinion about just about everything, including the college football playoff. I've listened to several takes, and I do have a hot take because I do want to reflect back on a team that had the easiest schedule, clear path to the national championship. That was back in the 80s. I will get into that later in the show. But let's talk about what happened over the weekend. The Muskogee County Christmas Showcase. What a showcase it was. And look, I got to call the first game on Friday. I felt like it was very important for me to be a part of this thing. I was out of town all day Saturday. And while I was watching the games, I realized how much talent we have at Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And it was nice to know that there's other talented broadcasters out there and that I don't have to do everything, even though I want to, because I love calling games. When there's an opportunity to just take a break, spend time with family, I will take advantage of that. And I missed it, but, I'm ready to get back to work. I will be on the call along with Thrip Berenger, Noah Shelton. Hopefully some other broadcasters might get in on the action for Border Wars at Glenwood Friday and Saturday. And they have included some public schools. We're going to get to see Marion County. We're going to get to see Chaco. We're going to get to see Valley, Beulah. This is exciting. And, of course, Glenwood and Calvary Christian will be in it as well. So Friday, I called the Jordan Hanley game. Thrip Berenger and I were there doing the pregame for Columbus State. Cougars and Lady Cougars. Both Cougars and Lady Cougars won their games. What fantastic wins. And we also had the Douglas County Hardaway boys. That was after the game that I did with Thrip Berenger. Thrift and Coach Corey Black called the game with Bocelli and Hardaway. That was the game of the night. Buzzer beater by Bocelli. Grace Smith, the freshman, it was tied at 44, 7 seconds left to go, takes it the length of the court and puts up the game winner. And what a win for the Bocelli Lady Vikings to defeat the Hardaway Lady Hawks, two of the best teams in our area going face-to-face. It was just an incredible sight. And I enjoyed watching it on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. While I was spending time with the family on Saturday, I just happened to peruse through my phone every now and then. And, Noah Shelton called the first two games. We had Mike Peacock, Robert Edmonds. And then, of course, the nightcap, we had Thrip Berenger. And I was really excited that we had all these broadcasters that filled in when needed. And it was just a great atmosphere. Kendrick ends up getting a big win against Creekside. They're 11-1. We had Spencer end up beating Calvary. With the Spencer girls ended up beating Lee County. Northside boys ended up beating Columbus boys. It was just a great atmosphere. Russell County, they ended up getting their win over Northside. The Russell County boys fell to the Shaw boys. the Muskogee County Christmas Showcase, Columbus State University at the Lumpkin Center. What a great success. And we also had the FCA All-Star Game, North versus South, at Otis Spencer Stadium, and Rick Beach was on the call, along with defensive coordinator for the Carver Tigers, Justin Newman. So that was an exciting time to see the All-Star Game put on by the Fellowship of Christian Athletes and Jonathan Carastory, who is their president chapter of the West Georgia FCA. All right, let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the college football playoff because, look, take emotion out of it, because I was a little emotional when I saw the first two games of the college football playoff where the teams that were the higher seeds were on the road decided not to show up. And some of the takeaways I got from the first round of the college football playoff was that home field advantage is going to matter in this thing, especially in the first round, especially when the weather gets bad. But I honestly think that the College Football Committee didn't get it right. In fact, I put on social media, they should be ashamed of themselves. Clearly, SMU and Indiana did not deserve to be there. You know, it's not about who is deserving. It's the 12 best teams. And Alabama, Ole Miss, even South Carolina would have done a better job. I mean, you don't think that you would like to see Ole Miss take on Notre Dame? Ole Miss would probably be favored against Notre Dame, even on the road, or South Carolina, Notre Dame, Alabama, Notre Dame. I think that would have been the better matchup. Look, Indiana had a great season. Congratulations. Kirk Cignetti came over from James Madison, did a great job, but Indiana did not play anybody until they took on Ohio State, where they lost. And clearly, and I'm gonna put up this graphic because, yes, I do have graphics. And I wanted to talk about this game because I was hyped for this game. The Battle of Indiana, Friday night, college football playoff atmosphere in South Bend. Sign me up for that. But Notre Dame, even though the score 27-17, Notre Dame completely dominated this game. They were up 27-3. Indiana did score 2 late touchdowns, but it was not enough. And Notre Dame advances, where they will take on Georgia in the Sugar Bowl on New Year's Day, which will be the rematch of the 1980 National Championship, and also the 2 regular season games in 2017 and 2019, which were fantastic regular season games. I cannot wait for this game. But I do want to talk about how Indiana had a good season. But were they deserving of getting a college football playoff berth over Alabama? Well, yeah, they had 1 loss. Alabama had 3 losses. But, yeah, Alabama would have gave Notre Dame a much more competitive game. And I think that the committee is really going to have to factor in strength of schedule. But you can't debate 1 loss to 3 losses. You can debate 2 losses, but I think the College Football Committee set the precedence when they ranked Miami below Alabama, but they ranked Miami ahead of Ole Miss and South Carolina. If you didn't have 3 3-loss teams in the SEC, I think that Alabama or Ole Miss, they would have gotten in. They definitely would have got in with 2 losses. But you're comparing apples to oranges. The committee values wins and losses. This is what they're telling people. Look, back in 1984, BYU won the national championship. They went undefeated. They didn't play anybody that year, but they won the national championship. They did beat a number 3 ranked Pittsburgh to start the season, and they beat Michigan in their bowl game. But they smoked everybody in the WAC. This was the last non-Power 4 team to win a national championship. And, you know, they had Vice Sakahima on their team. They had Trevor Maddich. I mean, they didn't have Steve Young. Steve Young left the year before. I mean, you would think, would this be a BYU team that would be competitive? This would be a BYU team that was deserving of a national championship. This was one of their least talented teams. They just had a very good record, and they won the national championship. There's been cases where national championships were shared, like in 1990, where Georgia Tech had a tie, but Colorado had a loss. Colorado had a better strength of schedule. So the voters shared the national championship with both. Washington and Miami shared a national championship. You had Tennessee and Nebraska share a national. Oh, no, Michigan and Nebraska share a national championship. Look, when we implemented the BCS, there was controversy. I get that. When we had the 4-team college football playoff, there was controversy. You knew that the 12-team college football playoff team, the playoff matchups would be controversy. And that's what we're dealing with right now. But congratulations to Notre Dame getting a big win over Indiana, where they will take on Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. All right, let's move on to the noon game, where another team that they were undefeated in conference play. They were ranked number 8, and the voters didn't want to drop them below Miami, or they didn't want to drop them below Alabama, didn't want to drop them below SMU or Ole Miss. I mean, because you have those 3-loss teams, clumped together, and then what are you going to do with Miami? SMU got rewarded because they made it to the conference championship, but they did lose to Clemson. So they got that final spot, the 11th seed, and they were no match against Penn State. This game wasn't even competitive. Penn State completely dominated this game. And another first 2 games right out the bat. I put on my social media, the College Football Committee should be ashamed of themselves. Look, this was not their fault. This was Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina not getting to 2 losses. They had 3 losses, and the committee could not justify putting all, because if you put 1, you have to put all 3 in. I'm telling you, because the margin of error between Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, even though head-to-head mattered, I would probably leave out South Carolina. Alabama and Ole Miss. Alabama had some terrible losses. Ole Miss, all 3 of their losses were to ranked teams that were in the top 25 that were really good teams. No, that was South Carolina. No, Ole Miss lost to Kentucky and Florida. So Alabama and Ole Miss had bad losses. South Carolina lost to 3 ranked teams. Yeah, I got those 2 teams mixed up. See what I mean? There's 3 teams in the SEC, all with 3 losses. They did it to themselves. So the College Football Playoff Committee had no choice but to put SMU here, where they got boat raced by Penn State, which Penn State will move on to take on Boise State New Year's Eve in the Fiesta Bowl. All right, the first 2 College Football Playoff games down, and I was getting excited about Clemson, Texas. I thought this was going to be a competitive game. And for most part, it was. In fact, Clemson had a 1st and goal. They could have made it a 1-score lead. The narrative is that Texas didn't play anybody. Well, Texas was able to get the job done, where they will take on Arizona State in the Peach Bowl next. But, you got to give credit that Clemson, they fought, they showed up. Big shout out to Central's TJ Parker, one of the best defensive linemen in the country. He's having a phenomenal year for the Clemson Tigers. I think that he's going to be just a star at Clemson. Clemson had a good season, but Texas trying to prove something, trying to prove that they can beat somebody. I think they're going to be favored. They're favored by double digits against Arizona State. I do think Texas got a clear path to get to the national championship. Because this was the game I was really looking forward to. But it goes to show that home field advantage matters. Well, first of all, Tennessee had a lot of fans at the Horseshoe. And I seriously thought this was going to be a competitive game, but Ohio State in this game proved that talent for talent, they are the best team in college football. And they had a game plan from the start. Long, sustainable drives, make defensive plays when it matters, get a score, get a lead early, and put this game away. And Tennessee could not overcome the talent that Ohio State had. This was a statement game for Ohio State because they've had a lot of people criticize their program after losing to an unranked Michigan team at home. The College Football Playoff Committee, guess what? They reward them with a home College Football Playoff game. And in a favorable spot where they get to rematch against Oregon in the Rose Bowl. I actually think that this game just I don't know. When I was thinking about what to say about this game, maybe Tennessee wasn't ready for the moment. This was the first time that Tennessee is in the college football playoff. And the last time that Tennessee had a chance to win a national championship maybe was back in 2001. It's been a very long time. And the fact that Tennessee was here, it was a win for the Tennessee Volunteers. Nico Iliamavea is going to be a great player. Dylan Sampson got hurt. I thought that did make a difference, but it was Ohio State, just a machine, coming out there with drives and scoring right away and jumping up early on Tennessee. And Ohio State, which I think is the most talented team left in the college football playoff, got a statement win. And it saves Ryan Day's job, because I think if Tennessee would have won this game, I think that Ohio State would have fired Ryan Day. The big controversy was, why didn't Tennessee host this playoff game? Why wasn't this at Neyland Stadium? Why was Ohio State rewarded with a home playoff game when they lost to an unranked Michigan team? Well, I mean, Tennessee did have 2 losses. Ohio State had 2 losses. Tennessee did lose to a 6-6 Arkansas team, and they lost to a Georgia team. And Ohio State's losses were to a 7-5 Michigan team and an Oregon team on, a last-minute play where if Will Howard slides maybe with 1 second left, Ohio State might have kicked the game-winning field goal, and we wouldn't be having this conversation. All right, let's go ahead and move on, because we did have some other bowl games on Friday. Let's see, Ohio beat Jacksonville State 30-27 in the Cure Bowl. Florida ends up beating Tulane 33-8. Florida finishing 8-5 with the schedule they had. That is a win, and they're keeping Billy Napier. DJ Lagway is going to be their quarterback next year. The future looks bright for Florida. What a game. DJ Lagway passed for over 300 yards. Such a great game. All right, let's take a look at the FCS semifinals. North Dakota State beat South Dakota State 28-21. Montana State beat South Dakota 31-17. So the FCS final is going to be Montana State and North Dakota State. So here we go again, another FCS title for North Dakota State, more than likely. Although Montana State 15-0, North Dakota State 2 losses. One of those losses was to Colorado to start the season. That's going to be fun. That's going to be that first weekend in January. And Ferris State are your NCAA Division II champions. They defeat Valdosta State. I saw this game on ESPN Plus. It was tough. All right, so we got some bowl games that are happening later this afternoon. Let me go ahead and put up the bowl schedule. We do have South Florida taking on San Jose State. That is going to be on Christmas Eve. So let's take a look. Yeah, Christmas Eve, South Florida, San Jose State. I'm trying to figure out, is there a bowl game today? Let me pull up my schedule. So this is why. So we got the Hawaii Bowl, South Florida, San Jose State. All right. Let's go ahead and that's not what I want. All right. We also have on the day after Christmas, Pittsburgh and Toledo, Rutgers, Kansas State, Arkansas State, and Bowling Green. All right. Let's look at, I'm trying to think, do they have a bowl game that is today? That's not going to matter. All right. Friday. Yes, we do. We do have bowl games today. Coastal Carolina and UTSA, Northern Illinois, and Fresno State. Yeah, hard to believe that I had to pull up that information just to get like 3 seconds of information to you. But that's what I do here on the show. Friday, December 27th, Oklahoma and Navy, Georgia Tech taking on Vanderbilt in the Birmingham Bowl, Texas Tech and Arkansas in the Liberty Bowl, Syracuse and Washington State in the Holiday Bowl, on ESPN, and then we got the Las Vegas Bowl, USC, Texas A&M. Got some bowl games on Saturday as well, and the one that I definitely want to watch is BYU and Colorado. I think that's going to get a big number. And we also have Miami and Iowa State in the Pop-Tarts Bowl, which that's now my favorite mascot. Love that guy. It was really a lot of fun. A little creepy last year, but fun, creative. Pop-Tart mascot goes down in the toaster, and a big giant Pop-Tart comes out, and the winning team gets to eat some of that. It was kind of creepy. All right, let's go ahead and take our first break. But when we come back, we didn't just have college football. We had NFL. Michael Penix Jr. gets the win for the Atlanta Falcons. I will talk about playoff scenarios in the NFL. You don't want to go anywhere. It is the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. We'll be back after this.
Introducing Gatorade Water. Alkaline and electrolyte infused for great taste. Gatorade Water, always in motion.
And welcome back to the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. All right, let's talk Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons get the big win over the New York Giants. This was the first blowout win that the Falcons had since 2020 when they beat the Raiders. And the whole time I was thinking about this, Michael Penix Jr. did not lose the game for the Falcons. The Falcons defense helped them out with 2 pick sixes, and I couldn't really take away anything from this game. The Giants are terrible. They are the worst team in the NFL. They're going to get the overall number 1 draft pick, and they're going to get Shedeur Sanders. That's the reality of it. But Michael Penix Jr., he had a very solid game. Look, that interception was not his fault. That was Kyle Pitts, who bobbled the ball and it just falled into the Giants defender. So if you look at the box score, you see, well, Michael Penix Jr., he didn't have a touchdown. He did have an interception. But now, because the Atlanta Falcons are 8-7 and they are in first place in the division with the playoffs on the line, you're going to have to go to your strengths. You're going to have to rely on Bijan Robinson to carry you to the playoffs. But Michael Penix Jr., 18-27 for 202 yards. He did not have a touchdown, but he did have an interception. He just was efficient. And that's what you want from your rookie quarterback. Sometimes you need to be a game manager. And the reason why I say that the Atlanta Falcons are in first place, because the Sunday night football game, the Dallas Cowboys ended up defeating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker Mayfield had a chance to try to win the game, and there was a turnover. Dallas wins the game, and guess what? The Atlanta Falcons are back on top in the NFC South with a huge game that got flexed to Sunday night. Next week, they are taking on the Washington Commanders. And I tell you what, this is going to be an exciting game because I do think that if the Falcons win this game, that they're in the driver's seat for the playoffs, because they'll play the Panthers in week 18. I think they beat the Panthers. So some of the playoff scenarios, if they win out, and even if the Buccaneers win out as well, that there's a chance that the Atlanta Falcons will at least get the wild card. But I actually, if they win out and the Buccaneers win out, they're going to win the division. I know that they would rather have that, because I would rather host Minnesota than have to go to Philly and be the number 7 seed. But the Washington Commanders, who got the 36-33 victory over the Philadelphia Eagles, they were down 27-14 in this game. Jaden Daniels with 5 touchdown passes. Jalen Hurts got hurt, no pun intended, and he left the game. Kenny Pickett came in, but Washington was able to come back. You see what this means? That the quarterback really matters in this league. I know that Saquon Barkley's been carrying the Eagles, but quarterbacks do matter, and Jalen Hurts is a very efficient quarterback. I don't know what his status is going to be next week, but it's a huge win for the Washington Commanders because it knocks out the Cowboys, the 49ers. It knocked out a bunch of teams. The Cardinals, all of them have been eliminated from the playoffs because right now the Washington Commanders are 10-5. This is their best record since 1991. That was when they were known as the Redskins, and they won the Super Bowl that year. The Washington Commanders hosting the Atlanta Falcons on Sunday Night Football. I cannot wait for this game because this is going to be a de facto playoff game for the Atlanta Falcons. And I hope that the Atlanta Falcons show up and they show out because they do have a talented team. I would probably get rid of Kyle Pitts next year because he has been absolutely worthless. But you got Drake London and Darnell Mooney, who's been a very good 1-2 combo. I think that Darnell Mooney is the number one. I mean, let's be honest. And then Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. I think that Bijan Robinson is going to be the running back that you lean on to try to get you into the playoffs. And we could possibly see the Atlanta Falcons host a playoff game for the first time ever at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And even if they have to play the Vikings or the Lions, it's still a playoff game. You're making the playoffs for the first time since 2017. This is what's at stake. So these games matter. This Sunday night game is going to be absolutely insane if you are an Atlanta Falcons fan. And it is great to be a Falcons fan this morning. All right, let's go ahead and run down the NFL scores. We do have a Monday Night Football game tonight. The New Orleans Saints are going to be taking on the Green Bay Packers. We're going to start with the Saturday games. So the Kansas City Chiefs, they beat the Houston Texans 27-19. And Tank Dell, first of all, my thoughts and prayers go to Tank Dell. A gruesome injury on that touchdown. It was 17-10. They cut it to 17-16. Deshaun Watson just could not match the intensity of Patrick Mahomes. And what high ankle sprain. Patrick Mahomes didn't even look like he was injured. And the Chiefs are 14-1. They're in the driver's seat for the number one seed, but they haven't clinched the number one seed because if they lose to the Steelers on Christmas and if they lose to the Broncos in the Mile High City, and if the Buffalo Bills win out, the Bills are going to get the number one seed. All right, so the Baltimore Ravens, the division is still in play for the Ravens. They beat the Pittsburgh Steelers 34-17, and these four teams played on Saturday because they're all going to play on Christmas. Now, you're probably wondering, why is there a Wednesday night game? Why is there Wednesday games on Christmas? Well, it would be the equivalent of a Sunday-Thursday game because you cannot have 3 days to prepare for a football game. So now it's the normal playing on a short week, but we're playing on Wednesday now. It's the Chiefs and Steelers. It's the Texans and Ravens. All on Netflix. Netflix, I hope you get it right this time because a lot of people are depending on you. I don't think anybody's canceling their Netflix subscription if they don't get it right, but I still don't want to see any buffering, no rendering, nothing like that. All right, let's move down. Detroit gets a big 34-17 win over the Chicago Bears. Jared Goff with 3 touchdowns. Jahmyr Gibbs had over 109 yards. Jameson Williams got 143 yards. The Lions are banged up. Right now they are 13-2. It's looking like, they play the 49ers on Monday night next week. And, the Niners are, their season's over. I think the Lions end up winning that game. I mean, I kind of was wondering why they haven't flexed that game out because that game is meaningless to the 49ers. I think the Detroit Lions win that game, which would lead to a showdown week 18, which is probably going to be for the division when they play the Minnesota Vikings. Right now, the Detroit Lions would be the number one seed. And because the Eagles lost, they control their own destiny. I think the winner of that Vikings-Lions game in week 18 gets the number one seed. The Eagles losing, it really put a damper on, and I think the Eagles are locked into that number 2 seed, which means they won't get a first round bye, and they would have to play maybe a hot number 7 seed coming in. It could be somebody like the Rams or the Seahawks that could be there. But if the Commanders, they beat Dallas, because I think that the Commanders haven't clinched yet. If the Commanders lose to the Falcons and lose to the Cowboys, we could see a scenario where maybe Seattle or even Tampa Bay, if Tampa just continues winning. But I'll go into some of those playoff scenarios in just a minute. Bengals are still alive for the playoffs. Can you believe that? 7-8. They beat the Browns 24-6. The Bengals, if they win out, and they're going to need some help, they're going to need Denver to lose and to lose to Kansas City. Indy and Miami are also alive for the playoffs. Yeah, Indianapolis and Miami also alive for the playoffs. We've got the Colts end up beating the Titans 38-30. And we had the Miami Dolphins ended up beating the 49ers 29-17. The 49ers just have third stringers on their O-line position. That just goes to show that offensive line matters so much in this league, and you've got to get that line right. Look, I think that Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. He is not going to get $60 million, but you've got to have a very solid offensive line because he was running for his life. That interception was just because he was rushed. And I think that, this has been a disaster of a season for the 49ers. And they got eliminated before they even played this game. But a big win by the Dolphins. They're alive for the playoffs as well. We had, the Bills. They were down 14-7 in this game against the New England Patriots. They keep their hopes alive for a number one seed, winning 24-21. The Vikings end up beating the Seahawks in the Pacific Northwest 27-24, which now means the Rams are in first place in the NFC West. Right now, the Rams would be a number 3 seed. The Rams ended up beating the New York Jets 19-9. So here's what the playoff scenario looks like. If the season ended today, Detroit would be the 1 seed. Philadelphia would be the 2 seed. They would play the Washington Commanders in the first round of the playoffs. The Rams would be the number 3 seed. They would take on the Green Bay Packers at SoFi Stadium. And the Falcons would be hosting the Minnesota Vikings. Falcons are the 4 seed. The Vikings are the 5 seed. Over in the AFC. And by the way, Seattle and Tampa Bay still alive for the playoffs. The AFC, Kansas City right now would be the number 1 seed. Buffalo, the 2 seed. They would take on the Denver Broncos in the first round of the playoffs. Pittsburgh is the number 3 seed. They would be hosting the Los Angeles Chargers. The Houston Texans would be hosting the Baltimore Ravens. Indy, Miami, and Cincinnati all alive for the playoffs. That is your playoff scenario. Don't forget, we've got the Christmas games. We got a Thursday night game between the Seahawks and the Bears. And then we've got Week 17 coming your way to include the Sunday night game between the Atlanta Falcons and the Washington Commanders. Washington is a 4.5-point favorite. This is the playoffs. If you're a Falcons fan, they're in prime time, Sunday night. I know it's a tough situation for Michael Penix Jr. to get thrown into, but I do think that the Falcons have the tools to try to win this game. And the Commanders are also, they can't lose out. They haven't clinched anything. This is a big game for the Washington Commanders, but I do think that, they're riding high on emotion after beating the Eagles with that touchdown with 10 seconds to go. And I also think that the Falcons have a little bit of momentum as well as they got a huge blowout win against the New York Football Giants. All right, we're going to take a final break. When we get back, I still want to talk about college basketball and the NBA. That's coming up next here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge. Happy holidays to everybody, and we will talk to you in just a bit.
I'm thirsty.
Try this.
Starry.
It's a lemon lime soda that's crisp, clear, and
So refreshing.
bro, chill. It was a soda.
Starry lemon lime soda. It's different.
All right, we are back here on the Sports Beat with Richard Holdridge, presented by Georgia Alabama Sports Live. Just looking at college basketball, we had some pretty good games. Georgia ends up beating Charleston Southern 81-65. Georgia is 11-1 on the season. That happened yesterday. On Saturday, Auburn defeated Purdue 87-69. Big upsets. We had Ohio State beat Kentucky 85-65. We had Mississippi State beat Memphis 79-66. Florida still undefeated. I mean, we got Vanderbilt. That's 11-1. I said it before. The SEC is the best conference in college basketball. There's no debate right now. Alabama won. They are ranked 6th. Oklahoma's still undefeated. They won. We did have Missouri lose to Illinois. South Carolina won. I mean, South Carolina has probably the worst record of all the teams in the SEC. And we got Tennessee. That's the number 1 ranked team in all of the land. They are taking on MTSU. And there's not a whole lot of college basketball games that are going on, especially during the Christmas break. We get ready for conference play next year. Georgia is looking like they're going to win another game against South Carolina State, go 12-1, and have to play Ole Miss to start SEC play. And meanwhile, Georgia Tech, they ended up losing to Duke at McCamish Pavilion over the weekend. And Georgia Tech is just having a tough season so far. 82-56, number 5th ranked Duke, as Georgia Tech falls to 5-7 on the season. They're going to take on Alabama A&M and Notre Dame to wrap up the season before they get ready to get into their ACC play, which they've already had a couple of ACC games. They've lost to Duke and they've lost to North Carolina so far on the season. All right, let's talk NBA, because the Atlanta Hawks on Saturday, they lose to the Memphis Grizzlies 128-112. They were playing without Trae Young. They are 14-15. We'll find out what type of team this Atlanta Hawks squad is, because with a full roster, when healthy, I think the Hawks can beat anybody in this league, and that includes the Celtics, and that includes the best team in the league, the Cleveland Cavaliers. They actually face them very well. They've already beaten both of them, and I think this Atlanta Hawks team, which right now they'd be a number 7 seed, you got a lot of mediocre teams. Mo Wagner for the Orlando Magic is out for the season. That's a huge loss. The Knicks, they're a good regular season team. It's because they're coached by Tom Thibodeau. They're going to play hard in the regular season. Does that equal postseason success? We're going to see that. Indiana has been they have been a disappointment. They really have. Even though they've won 4 straight, they have been a disappointment because they went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Same with the Bulls. Look just a lot different without DeMar DeRozan, which he has been a disappointment in Sacramento. Sacramento right now, with the exception of New Orleans, who is 5-25, New Orleans is probably the most disappointing team in the NBA. Zion Williamson has only played 6 games. Brandon Ingram is trying to carry this team. CJ McCollum, but DeJounte Murray is not the same player he was when he was on the Hawks. His points average has dipped down. Minnesota is kind of disappointing, 14-13. They would be right on the outside getting ready for the playoffs. Get this, Phoenix is 14-13. They would miss the playoffs if the season ended today. That is how deep the Western Conference is. And keep an eye on the Lakers. 3 straight wins. They are 16-12. But right now, OKC has the best record in the Western Conference, followed by the Memphis Grizzlies, which the Grizzlies, I've always been a believer in the depth that the Grizzlies have. With Jaren Jackson Jr., a high lottery pick, Ja Morant, I mean, he's only played 17 games, but Ja Morant, his points average has dipped a little bit, but you still have Sandy Almana, Desmond Bane, Zach Edey, and Scottie Pippen Jr., both rookies making impacts for the Memphis Grizzlies. Houston has been a really surprise team in the West. They have had a good season so far. Ime Udoka is going to be a candidate for Coach of the Year. Jalen Green is kind of worked out as a big-time lottery pick. And then Alperen Sengun, if this guy's not an all-star, I don't know what. Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks, they've had experience of being junkyard dogs, really. Fred VanVleet can just shoot it from anywhere, and he's got that championship success when he won a championship with the Toronto Raptors in 2019. So all in all, the NBA is in good shape. I know it's in decline, and it's because the young people of today and their attention span, their social media, the highlights, I mean, that's really what they want to see. But I just think that sitting around and watching a basketball game from start to finish, young people, they have a very short attention span, and they want to see highlights. And you can actually post a 3-second highlight on social media, and that's really what they want to see. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I actually wanted to get into the Riverdragons, winners of 3 straight. They defeated Athens on Friday at the Civic Center 2-1, and then they turn around and beat Athens on the road at the Ford Atkins Arena in Athens, Georgia, 4-3. They will take on they're going to be taking on the Blue Ridge Bobcats this Friday and Saturday at the Columbus Civic Center. Right now, they are in second place, 6 points behind the first place team in the Continental Division, the Baton Rouge Zydeco, and they are 2 points ahead of the Carolina Thunderbirds. Columbus State, 9-1, big win over Young Harris. They are going to be taking on Middle Georgia State College. That's going to be this Thursday. That's going to be at the Lumpkin Center. The Lady Cougars 7-3 after getting an 86-60 win over Faulkner. They are taking on Augusta University on the road on January the 4th. And I do want to say this because we're getting close to the new year. Baseball season is just around the corner. January the 31st is the first game for Columbus State baseball. And you know that first weekend in February, we might have baseball media days. We might have our first games for high school baseball in February on Georgia Alabama Sports Live. And, of course, we are all counting down until April the 15th, Synovus Park, the Columbus Cleanstones home opener against the Pensacola Blue Wahoos. I'm excited about that. The Braves signed former Columbus State baseball player Colton Ingram to a minor league deal. He might be pitching for the Columbus Cleanstones. And on a sad note, the passing of probably one of the greatest stolen base leaders of all time. If not, he is the GOAT when it comes to stolen bases. Rickey Henderson passed away at the age of 65. When I was a kid, Rickey Henderson, in my lifetime, was the best leadoff hitter ever. I mean, he batted right, he threw left. But he was in an era of baseball, he would get 120 stolen bases, and that would just be a normal regular season for Rickey Henderson. Nobody stole bases like Rickey Henderson. I just don't think they're doing that anymore. And, you know, he won a World Series with the A's. He won a World Series with the Toronto Blue Jays. I mean, he was a winner. He was a leader in the clubhouse. And my childhood is just because, you know, the Oakland Athletics, they're no longer the Oakland Athletics. They're going to be called the Athletics in 2025. I mean, on that A's team, I mean, we've lost Bob Welch. We've lost Dave Parker. We've lost Dave Henderson. We've lost Rickey Henderson now. It is very, very tough just to see, you know, this team that I grew up rooting against because I was a Giants fan, but this team was dominant in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's just sad to see, you know, Rickey Henderson passing on. And, you know, thoughts and prayers go out to the family, and, yeah, it's a huge loss in baseball. He will definitely be missed. Well, that's all the show that we've got. Don't forget, I'm not going to have a show on Christmas. I will have a show on Friday, the 27th, as we get ready for bowl season, and we'll preview the Border Wars. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. We'll see you next time.